So the next story in Lost Legends, what's Lost Legends? I keep wanting to call it Lost Mysteries. So the next story in Lost Legends is Don't Dimension It, which I think is a perfect way to address all the fans being upset, or not all the fans, but every fan who was upset at this, at the fact at Mabel being like so selfish. Everyone like pointing out, well, Mabel got everything she wanted during the summer and Dipper always sacrificed for her, and then she just gets what she wants again, and everyone, that whole thing. And of course there's a little bit of it in the journal of her like apologizing, but this just like seals the deal. This is a perfect story to address this. And in this, Mabel ends up getting lost herself in another dimension. Of course, since it's a short comic, it's not for very long, and of course not for like 30 years like Ford was lost. But let's go ahead and get started on this. Where they're at now is they are looking for oddities, and like Ford is saying here, so keep your eye out for anything Lovecrafty. And this right here is, I just thought was funny. Ford is telling Dipper what the multiverse is like. It's confusing. 1 minute you're breathing air, the next you're breathing fingers. Think you find a sandwich? It's a planet. You just ate a planet. So that means Ford accidentally ate a planet. Oh, and this is where they're at Mabel's fault line, which I thought was kind of clever, because it technically is Mabel's fault. But this is where like that all happened, where Bill smashed the thingy, the snow globe, the floaty snow globe thingy, the rift, and it caused kind of like a rift that kind of like some weirdness was accumulating, and there were still some little rips in reality. So that's what the family's doing right now, the Pines are doing right now. They are going out to seal up those, those holes, those loose ends, if you will. And here is Stan and Ford, who were arguing about who would be the best caretaker. And I think it's funny that Stan never actually knew Dipper's real name. So Ford's like, what's Dipper's real name? Bartholomew. I don't know. Bottom line, I could caretake circles around you. That just made me laugh. Bartholomew. That's, forget, what was it, Mason? Forget Mason, his name's Bartholomew now. And then Mabel brings Waddles. Dipper's all like, aren't you being a little self-centered, blah, 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 blah. But she's like still in the character of Mabel. But yeah, it's a little self-centered to bring your pig on a very important mission, because we're supposed to be, being kind of serious about this. So Dipper basically says, Mabel, I know you don't want to hear this, but don't you think you're being a pinch self-centered? What? I'm the least self-centered person. Yeah. And then Waddles runs off for a moment, and then Mabel goes to find him. She finds him, and then there's this lovely thing behind her. And if you can guess what happens next. A thing! I'm being grabbed by a thing! And so that finger is pulling her into the multiverse. And oh my gosh, this picture. This picture. Poor Stan. Oh, poor Stan. He's all like, no, it's happening again. No! Ugh. That poor man. So he's freaking out. So Mabel falls into the portal into the other dimension. And she, apparently any portal immediately goes to Dimension 0, which is the Nightmare Realm. That thing is terrifying, and its design is amazing. And so then Mabel falls through a whole bunch of different dimensions. She falls through, apparently, a dimension where my thumb is the sky. Mystery Shack Zone. It's like Sonic the Hedgehog. I wonder who's running through that. Who's the fastest and Gravity Falls. I don't think it even says. Probably Tyler Cute Biker. He's probably pretty fast. There's Bill's dimension. He's got a statue. He was the worst. Some fish dimension and a cat. I wonder whose cat that is. And then Mabel ends up falling into a dimension with a whole bunch of other Mabels. So this is going to be fun to look at. There's Planet Mabel. There's Fairy Mabel. There's Tyrannosaurus Rex Mabel, there's Tall Mabel, there's Old Mabel, there's Rainbow Bright Mabel, there's Eyeball Mabel, there's Sketchy Mabel, there's Abraham Lincoln Mabel, there's Horse Mabel, there's Cowboy Mabel, there's Pac-Man Mabel. I'm not going to name all the Mabels. There's Praying Mantis Mabel, Duck Mabel, maybe I am. Mabelbot. There's Vampire Mabel, and over here, there's, looks like Gargoyle Mabel. So, in Hand Mabel, Melty Mabel, Dip Mabel, TV Mabel. Anyway, where's is it Wally or Waldo? Where's Waldo Mabel? Anyway, I'm done pointing out all the Mabels. She ends up in a place with a whole bunch of Mabels. Oh, another Mabel picture. And so she's there, and Explain Mabel. Apparently, whenever someone gets lost in the multiverse, they kind of end up with a whole bunch of other of themselves. Which, let me just read what Explain Mabel says here. Allow me to explain. When similar beings get lost in the multiverse, they tend to be drawn to each other, clustering together like potato chips crumbs at the bottom of a bag. Welcome to dimension MAB3L, where lost Mabel stick together. If that's the case, did Ford end up in a dimension at some point where, you know, it was a whole bunch of lost Fords? Because that would seem to, like, make sense. But this kind of contradicts something that is in journal number 3, where Fiddleford from another dimension tells Stanford that he can't see his other dimensional self, otherwise it would destroy the entire dimension if they, like, looked at each other or, like, touched. But I don't know, maybe Fiddleford lied. So I'm actually going to make a separate video about that. But that mess there only opens a can of worms. It doesn't really affect this story. The story is still great. So anyway, that's where they are. A whole bunch. These are all lost Mabels. And apparently they could all get out, except the smartest Mabel is working on her sticker collection and won't finish the dimensional escape pod to get out of there. And that is Tyrannosaurus Rex Mabel saying, I want to pet a puppy. Mabel, this is our Mabel, gets irritated with all the other Mabels because they're all focused on themselves and don't want to do anything to actually help get out of, you know, their predicament. And this is Ford and Stan looking for Mabel in the multiverse, which I think is so cool because I'm 100% sure that Stan wasn't going to let Ford go back into the multiverse without him being there. He's like, nope, you were gone for 30 years. You're not going in there by yourself. Oh, I have the same picture twice again. And then here's Stan threatening Ford because, he does not want to lose another family member in another dimension. And here's him looking into some dimension bubble and gets some sort of little Cthulhu thing stuck on his head. And then Mabel tries to reason with Brainabel, whatever. But she's too busy with her sticker collection. And some slacker Mabel tries to tell her to chillax, but she's all like, she doesn't like him because she wants to get out of there. And here she is. And then she meets another Mabel. I wonder if this will be the bad guy / antagonist. Anyway, and so she ends up becoming friends with this Mabel and thinks she's the anti-label Mabel. If you just heard a burp in the background, you can thank my husband. Okay, moving on. Where was I? Here's Stan Bell. Oh my gosh. That's the creepiest thing in the entire the entire book. Ugh. I like the sweater though. The sweater's perfect. And here's some codes. I haven't cracked them yet, but I have done a decent amount of them that I found in the book, which again I'm going to do a separate video on. And so Stan and Ford end up, hitchhiking and Hitchhiker's Guide to the Multiverse. That's brilliant. Anyway, end up hitchhiking and get this multi-dimensional truck driver, I guess, to give him a ride so they can help find Mabel. And the guy's all like, maybe I have, but I never let a known criminal onto my truck. And Stan thinks he's talking about him. My criminal record made it into space. I gotta admit, I'm kind of impressed with myself. But then, of course, not talking about Stan, he's talking about Ford, which Stan thinks is hilarious, and I think it's hilarious too. I'm glad it was brought up. And so Stan just kind of shoves it in his face, and it's hilarious. So I says, dark matter, more like dork matter. And then Ford says, I hate this. It's funny. It is. Don't tell me it's not. And so Mabel and other Mabel end up finding a way to signal the Stans where they are so they can go get rescued. And that is when the bad Mabel, the anti-Mabel, ends up double-crossing the regular Mabel and locks her in an outhouse and plans to assume her identity in her dimension and, take over and do bad Mabel-y things. And so that's her impression. Then Stan just falls for it. That's her. But, of course, Ford's all like, I don't think so. And then Mabel gets upset with the other Mabels in the dimension again because she's all like, what's wrong with you guys? This is an important mission and you're just all being totally self-centered. And then she has her realization and then she's all like, Mabel, you gotta work on yourself. So this was a good little episode story comic thing to address that. And then she inspires them with the inspiry words, and they all have grappling hooks. Oh, darn it, there we go. And, oh, man, he's just so happy that she's back, and it's not really her. Look how, oh my gosh, it's heart-melting. I hate it. It's sad that it's not really her. Okay, let's continue. Because, oh my gosh. Anyway. And so Stan's kind of just thinking, oh, it's just Mabel. It's totally Mabel. But, of course, it's not Mabel. And I love Ford's suspicious face. It's perfect. And I love this. Great Uncle Stanford, do you have any futuristic mega weapons that I could bring home with me for educational purposes? And he's all like, yes, over by the airlock. And then Stan still thinks it's Mabel. And then he's all like, Mabel, sweetie, I think you had too much sugar. And finally, she says, I'm not Mabel. And Ford's like, dang it, Stan, you got the wrong one. Oh, this is just too perfect. Okay, and I took a picture of this because I thought it was funny. The other Mabels come, and Mabel ends up bringing all the other Mabels, and they come and rescue them, of course, and that's Fire Mabel, which I think she's cool, but I think it's funny. Stan's like, this is dumb. All of this is dumb. And I don't know if that's bad Mabel punching good Mabel or good Mabel punching bad Mabel, but Mabel punches Mabel. And they have, of course, it's the whole, they look exactly the same. How do we know which one we're supposed to shoot? And so they're trying to figure out which one's the real Mabel. And the way they find out is pretty hilarious. She ends up like, this Mabel right here ends up pulling off her sweater. And underneath her sweater it says, "I hate cats," which is obviously the bad Mabel. And then, villain Mabel has her last words. Every selfish choice you make, that's being just like me. What you do, what I have to say to that, and blah, blah. And she goes, this is for military Mabel, which is one of the Mabels that helped them escape. And I don't know, I think she died. Then they shut her out of an airlock. And then, yay, bye. Feels bad. I love you both. Hugs, brothers, all that good stuff. Oh, that's another thing, another code message thingy. Standing for being brothers. Mabel gives Dipper that journal that it showed in journal number 3. So I like kind of how it added, like where he got that. She got it from one of the Mabels that was Mabipper. That's not the best name, if you know what I'm coming from on that. But anyway, and then the next one is one of my favorite one. Actually, my favorite one is, I love all of them, but my favorite one has got to be a toss-up between this one and the one we just read. But I'm going to go ahead and pause this now, and I will finish up in just a little bit.